I'm with Sarah Breskman Cosme here in Luxor, Egypt, and I am part of a tour that Sarah has organised with Suzanne Spooner. And so, welcome, Sarah, to Exopolitics Today.
Thanks so much for having me. What a fun interview you're doing.
Well, we're dressed up in our Egyptian garb. I mean, this is really a fun event for us. And so now we get a chance to kind of talk about the tour, what we saw, and about your research with QHHT and Egypt. So why don't you tell us, the audience, just to remind us about your QHHT research and how Egypt pertains to that.
Sure. Well, I am the author of all the Hypnotist Journey books. So I've written A Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis, A Hypnotist Journey to the Secrets of the Sphinx, and A Hypnotist Journey from the Trail to the Star People. And I'm a master hypnotist and a level 3 QHHT Dolores Cannon practitioner. And I've probably done like, I don't know how many thousands of sessions. But the way I research is I'll have a bunch of hypnosis subjects at one given time, and I will work with them. They never get to meet each other, but in that way I can validate things because I make sure it all correlates with the information that I'm receiving from my other subjects. So that's essentially how I go about my research.
Okay, so all your research on Egypt is based on what your clients have told you in these hypnotherapy sessions where you get them to speak about their past lives.
Essentially, yes. Sometimes when I'm using a client for research, I don't always ask them about their past lives. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll use a keyword and I'll speak directly with their higher self, their subconscious. And in that way, I can find out anything about the information that I'm looking for, speaking directly with their subconscious. It's a method that Dolores Cannon perfected, and so I've adapted that method in my research.
Okay, so what are some of the main points that you've discovered in all of your research on Egypt?
One of the main points that I've discovered in all my research on Egypt was that Egypt and Atlantis were very closely connected. In fact, there was a time when this being named, who came across in my sessions by the name of Three or Thoth, was was trying to make sure that this very important knowledge and information would be kept sacred and hidden and available for the future generations at a much later date. And so he worked with some Atlanteans to not only teach them the sacred wisdom, but to hide certain artifacts that would be very valuable to us. And that traveled from Atlantis, like these special red crystals, through Egypt, hidden in Egypt for quite a very long time. Then it moved to like the Scotland, England area. And now a lot of that is located in Nova Scotia and Canada, actually. But there's other places all over the globe where this information is hidden. And basically, it's just not the time yet for this information to come forward. But, it will be soon as we continue this ascension process.
So who built the pyramids?
Oh my gosh, so it's so interesting because the pyramids, according to my clients, have been built by many different extraterrestrial races. For the Great Pyramid, according to my clients, and again, I'm using like 5 or 6 different hypnosis subjects, so I'm putting them under hypnosis. They never meet, and I'm asking them all the same question. Thoth built the Great Pyramid, but he did so in a different dimension. And then he brought the plans and this pyramid almost like down into this dimension. And some of the finishing touches were actually put on this Great Pyramid once it was here in the third dimension. Some of the other pyramids were built by other extraterrestrial races, and they all use a specific type of blueprint for these pyramids. So before the pyramids were built, and if you think about the pyramids and you think about this technology, this is like extraterrestrial technology. obviously the earth didn't produce it on its own, so it's artificial. And what happened was the earth herself said, she put out a call and said she wanted to go through the ascension process. Now, many other planets have gone through the ascension process, but Earth wanted to go through the ascension process. So, because Earth put this call out, then came certain types of extraterrestrials here who decided they were going to put the blueprint on the Earth and a grid system on the Earth, which would lead to this experiment and this experience of the ascension process. The pyramids are part of this ascension process. So right now they flow, or they're on a grid system that is a ley line grid system. But there's also an element of a false grid attached to these pyramids. So this has enabled this kind of like enabled like a negativity to assert itself on the planet, which allows for the growth of the human evolution and the planet itself. But at a point in our future, all the pyramid portals will light up. And when it does so, this light will shine almost like a beacon of rainbow light throughout the whole planet, throughout the universe. And that will in turn really just kind of move us up in a new frequency.
So Thoth or Jehuti created the pyramids, or one of the beings involved in creating the pyramids. So, and he has the ibis head. So what does that represent? I mean, is he an extraterrestrial? Is he an avian being? Is he a human that morph into an avian being? Yeah. So, what do you think's going on with that?
When he's come through my sessions, he has described himself as more of like a being close to source. He never merged with source because he would not be able to do this type of work, but he feels like he is the ascension keeper of all the planets that are going through the ascension. So Thoth basically came to this planetary sphere to help with the ascension process, and he helps everyone as part of the ascension process. Um, he describes himself almost like as a consciousness. And the reason why he went by three and not he or she is he doesn't claim to have a gender. But throughout history, he has shape shifted into many different um, figures, so to speak, or there have been times in history where he came almost looking like one of the hybrid Atlanteans. And the reason why he chooses different, or it chooses different shapes, was to help the people that knew they were looking for some type of being like this. So he has changed throughout history.
Uh, what about some of the other beings in the Egyptian pantheon? I mean, we got, for example, Horus with the eagle or the hawk head. You've got also others like Sobek with the crocodile head. I mean, are we looking at different extraterrestrial beings, or are we looking at shape shifting? What is going on with those beings?
So the way my clients have described it is they are definitely able to shape shift, but these are hybrid beings. So they were strategically placed into different civilizations. This has gone on throughout our history in so many different cycles where an extraterrestrial hybrid being would be placed into a civilization in order to teach the population something. So these beings were considered godlike because they had so many abilities, but in a sense, they were not really gods, they were just hybrid extraterrestrials.
Okay, so when we're looking at the Egyptian pantheon, we're looking at extraterrestrials who have arrived and they're playing a role. Now, were the ones in the Egyptian pantheon kind of unique to Egypt? Because you have the Greek gods, the Norse gods, the Anunnaki, the Vedic gods. Is there a lot of overlap, or is there kind of like, are they unique?
Well, they were kind of unique because they were placed specifically in certain regions. However, some of these Egyptian gods were not unique. like the Hathors. I mean, many people describe the Hathors as going through many different dimensions, many different cycles. And the reason behind that is, according to my clients, the Hathors are ascended humans. It's an ascended human race. So many people have a fraction of the Hathors within their soul DNA. And it's one of the reasons why the Hathors want to help humanity so much, is because they are humans.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I kind of like got when I was on the tour with you, well, actually, we're still on the tour, but when we were near Aswan, there's a place called Kom Orba, and it's dedicated to Sobek, this crocodile-headed god. And as I was walking around, looking at all of the images, what I got, the sense I got, was that this was not really a temple as we think it, like you go there to worship your particular god, but it was more almost like an academy, a learning center, or an ascension center, if you like. So what do you think of that? I mean, with that particular temple and other temples that you've visited, or your clients have told you about?
So all temples were essentially places of learning. And temples, in a sense, actually have a consciousness. The consciousness hasn't disappeared, it's still very much there. And the temples were created in case civilizations or people forgot this sacred knowledge, or they forgot this information that was taught in these temples. So it's put in the walls, and there are specific like light codes and frequencies that a person feels when they go in there. And a lot of these temples teach things like mathematics and um, different things according to whichever temple you're going in. And so there is a reason why these temples are built on a specific place. It's because there's a very specific energy grid that's located where the temple is built. And what most people don't understand is that the temples call them to it. So nobody goes into these temples by accident. Even people on a tour, they're going because essentially they were called to these temples, because the temple is ready to impart you with knowledge, so to speak, is what my clients have said.
Okay, so for people that are exposed to these temples or go there and they open themselves up, are there any risks involved? Some people might say that, well, there are positive ET entities and negative ET entities, and people shouldn't go into places where you might have one or the other. What do you say to that? I mean,
I love that question. I think it's always important to use your discernment, because, of course, it's like that saying in Egypt, as above, so below. There's light and dark, there's always positive and negative. But essentially, according to my clients, the what you might pick up in one of these places would be like more like a negative energy. But I mean, just using your own discernment, you can just be your own sovereign being. You don't have to, accept any kind of negativity. And essentially, when you're going through these temples, it's almost like it's easier for you to connect with your divine essence. So you feel more empowered to go in one of these temples. So I've never heard of there being a risk per se for anyone to be so open that they would receive or get an attachment from a negative being, because most of the beings that would be located in a temple would be extremely ascended and there to help you on your journey.
one of the things I noticed on many of the temples that we visited during the tour was that, like, you have almost like a pantheon of the different ETs or different gods. So, did the Egyptian gods have an organization?
I believe they did. There's always seems to be an organization for everything going on, especially when it comes to the human race. There'll be like a group that's overseeing, what sort of things they're learning, or a group looking at the experiment, always checking in with the experiment. How's it going right now? Even now, I mean, everything we do, we're being talked about by groups of extraterrestrials watching us, going over what we're doing. Everything we're doing is affecting the whole universe.
So, people, well, let's kind of look at one of the oldest kind of like organizations that's mentioned is this the assembly of the gods. And I know in the kind of Sumerian literature they talk about this assembly where you had the chief gods, Enlil, Enki, Marduk, and there were all these other gods that were there making decisions for humanity, for the future of humanity. So, what do you think about the idea of an assembly of the gods? And more recently, people are talking about a galactic federation, assembly, or a galactic confederation. What do you think of these different organizations that may be very ancient or intervening today?
Well, according to my clients, most of us have an aspect of ourselves that is part of the Galactic Federation. And that's one of the reasons why we're here playing this game. Because if you think about time, it doesn't really exist in the rest of the universe. So we are doing everything all at once. So I would say most of us are overseeing the experiment that we are playing in, so to speak. But throughout history, there seems to be a like a federation watching everything. Even my clients describe when Atlantis fell that that was planned in a sense. That Atlantis was always meant to fall, and that's because there had to have been this destruction in order for this regrowth. And that's basically how this cycle of humanity keeps playing out. It's like you go through a golden age, you hit a pinnacle, then there's destruction, then there's rebirth and regrowth, just to try to keep learning and expanding and, moving through the cycles of time and the different levels of dimension.
I know Edgar Casey spoke about a confederation of planets that was doing the work of kind of like observing, interacting, trying to help our planet evolve during the time of Atlantis and afterwards. And he describes as things going horribly wrong because of this kind of like dark cabal that he called the Sons of Belial that just upended everything. So why? So, and I know this is a question I often get asked. Why is it that positive extraterrestrials allow dark groups to like subvert, take over, and destroy human civilization, or take up, or control it and manipulate it?
I know it's so fascinating, but what I've received is that you cannot grow. This is the law of the universe that you need light and dark for this ascension pathway, in a sense. And that's even why there was a false grid put on the earth. It was to attract a sort of negativity in order for this growth. It's almost like the radiation in the bananas in with early man, where that created a little bit of damage in the brain that led to a new growth within the brain. So that's basically how we learn. We go through these downfalls in order to come up, but to come up greater. It's like that symbol of the four corners that the Native Americans use. That symbol actually means that we in the center of this of the circle, so there's four lines going up, we all split ourselves out only to come back, but to come back greater. And that's one of the reasons behind that symbol, is to remind us that we're really just playing like a game here, a role. And the whole purpose is really for expansion and evolution.
Kind of like parents like allowing
Yeah.
their children to like stumble and fall and hurt themselves because that's how they learn.
Right. And even if you think about it, when you lose your job, it was for a new job or something new to happen. And it's the same way the universe works, the same way this earth process works. Everything is a reflection of itself. So that's why when these higher level beings said Atlantis was always meant to fall, it was for a reason, because it needed to fall in order for this new growth of the human, because the human being is the only being within the whole universe that's considered to have unlimited potential. So the human being is very special in the rest of the universe. So a human being can go from being so low vibrational to an unlimited potential. And that is why the human being was chosen and all its features to be the kind of like the avatar in this video game, so to speak.
Okay. So I know you've talked about the event, that this is something that is coming, and you've had clients describe this event. So, what is the event? Is it like an ascension process? What can you say about it?
So, the future and the future timelines, according to multiple clients under hypnosis, in the most latest research I've been doing, is that right now everyone has a future potential that would be different than everyone else because we all create our own timeline based on what we intuitively are thinking about, or I mean, what we deep down believe, our belief system. But we're headed for a nexus point, is what all the higher consciousness keep talking about. And there's many different future potentials for this nexus point. One of the future potentials for the nexus point is that one of the comets will pass in front of the sun, and the tail of the comet, because it's passing in front of the sun, will trigger a solar like flash, and this solar flash will then dismantle the toroidal field. So my clients under hypnosis call this that we're in like a toroidal field, and we have a veil, and it will dismantle that. So everyone will see into all the dimensions and basically see a lot of things that a lot of people aren't ready to see. Like your friends that don't believe in extraterrestrials will see extraterrestrials, and this will create a shift in consciousness, moving us all to the nexus point. When we reach the nexus point, there will be 3 timelines according to the higher consciousness. The top level timeline will be amazing. Like, I want to be on that timeline, but I'm probably in the middle timeline. So the top level timeline will be where we teach our children like consciousness, we use telepathy, other versions of ourselves and other timelines of ourselves. Extraterrestrials will come down to this planetary sphere and help us clean up our oceans, and it'll just be amazing. We'll live amongst extraterrestrials because they won't need to change their shape. They won't need to hide in a human form anymore. They'll be their true selves, and we will move into like a much higher frequency. Now, the middle timeline goes down the same trajectory as the grays. We forget that we came here as an experiment to become an organic advanced human. So all the emphasis is on keeping yourself as organic as possible and to not go too far with the AI technology. But the middle timeline forgets all this. They start to use technology and put it in their brains, and then a negative faction of extraterrestrials can then inhabit the human form. They eventually lose their bodies because they breed out all their emotions, and then they lose their planet just like the gray extraterrestrials. Then they have to find another viable resource through another universe that's holding us in a different time. The lower timeline ends abruptly as an agreement by the universe. It will just end. Those people that feel they need to complete a 3D reality will just be transferred to another Earth-like planet. There's actually multiple Earth-like planets. There's so many even. And but the light workers who wonder, they have this feeling like, I know I'm meant to do something, but I don't know what it is. The light workers will realize that they're placed in the middle timeline for a reason. And their reason is they're trying to shift the perspective of the middle people in the middle timeline to move them up to the top timeline. And basically all it is a shift in perspective. So they're essentially going to be, so the light workers will be, as I said, will be strategically placed in the middle timeline to shift the perspective of people in the middle timeline, to pop them up to the highest timeline. And the lowest timeline, like I said, will end abruptly, but they will be transferred to another 3D reality.
So the sun is going to play a big role in this. And you mentioned 3 timelines, and you also mentioned the sun going through some kind of micronova event or huge solar flash event? I know people have been talking about this. There's quite a few that have given a lot of data showing that micronovas or these enormous solar eruptions have happened periodically throughout our history. So you are getting from your clients that something like that is going to happen. There's going to be a micronova. And so I'm just wanting to kind of like understand better how that will relate to the three timelines. Because wouldn't the micronova kind of like fry the electronics and the transhumanist technologies in timeline two? So just explain.
So essentially, what they said was because everything will dismantle, and of course, there will be this micronova event, that everybody's consciousness will shift. So everyone will start to look at reality differently because they're all of a sudden, all of them, going to see all different realities at once. But this is the thing. This is just a potential. And so these are the timelines as just one potential. There's another potential that space arcs will save certain humans if things go wrong. So since this is an experiment, and what's crazy is my clients have said, we have done this before. Many people remember like experiencing a solar flash before on other planetary spheres. Like people remember going to the ascension process in other places, and the solar flash was too quick. People just understood so much about their reality too fast that they all of a sudden stopped needing to eat because they ascended so quickly. They didn't need to breed anymore. They kind of like moved into a much too high level of reality that it was decided that for this experiment they were going to go a lot slower. There is a lot of solar activity happening on the planet right now, actually. There are small little, like, solar, whatever you want to call that, ejections from the sun. And the higher consciousness has said that every human needs to get a little unfiltered sunlight. That what is happening right now is information is being downloaded through the portal of the sun straight through the unfiltered eyes into the pineal gland, and it's unlocking a lot of these dormant abilities, and it's transmitting information to the human that it can actually help you heal different things at different levels. um, but the sun plays a big role in what's happening. It's also going to be the solar or the light coming up from the inner earth too. So the inner earth also has its own light source, and we are basically being like flooded with this light anyway right now. And the purpose of that is to get us ready for this bigger flash so that we can handle it, so that we can still move through this ascension process somewhat slowly. But this, if the potential does happen, and if this comet triggers some sort of solar flash like that, it will feel quite abrupt and it will dismantle electronics. But for some reason, the higher self has said it's still going to go, the middle timeline still goes down the trajectory of the grays. I don't understand logistics around that.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that, but I'm very interested in what you said about the space arcs because I've done quite a bit of research on the space arcs, and I know Dolores Cannon talked about these space arcs playing a role in rescuing humanity during times of great cataclysm, and how people would be taken up and so forth. So, and I also know that today, apparently, according to an army whistleblower or insider that I'm working with, that there are a number of hidden space arcs buried around the planet. So, what do you know about space arcs and their potential use either to evacuate or rescue people or to see advanced technology?
The space arcs have been used throughout history, according to my clients, many, many times. In fact, some of my clients remember being taken aboard the space arc. What's so fascinating is they remember that when they're picked up, they put on a suit. They all remember this. And once they put on the suit, it's like an extraterrestrial suit. They remember what kind of game they're playing, what role they're playing. Many of the Mayans remember being picked up by the space arcs. So the space arcs are like Noah's Ark. but in space. And my clients have been saying that um, they do wish to kind of like warn people that some of the nefarious like players right now would like to be the first ones with these arcs and to make sure that the arc has like an aura around it, like a light around it, and it will almost glow. As you can see, it's like sort of alive, and that's the one you can trust. Not I mean, use your own discernment, not the very first one that you see it just as a potential like issue.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I mean, that would be kind of like the negative ones would suddenly reveal these huge craft,
Right.
claim to be here to rescue people from some impending disaster, and take off a lot of people that would be used as kind of slaves,
Exactly.
in a galactic slave trade.
Exactly. That's the that is the warning that does come through when it comes to the space arcs. They will distinctly have a glow about them.
Okay, so the real space arcs will be something that people can feel, or that they can discern as actually being genuine, as opposed to one of these fake arcs or fake rescue craft that would be used for negative purposes.
If you think about it this way, the space arcs are actually alive. They have like a consciousness, so they will feel like a conscious living being, and they will have like an aura. Well, I love what I do so much, and recently I've been hearing that different people are assigned to different arcs and they have markings on their body, which I find really fascinating. Some people will have like a symbol of like Orion's belt, and it looks like three freckles. It just looks like a simple line of freckles. So it'll look like Orion's belt, but it's actually just freckles. And this is a marking. Some people wake up from a dream and they have like certain freckles that just seem to appear, or different dots in certain positioning. And those are markings oftentimes to not only show you what type of extraterrestrial race you're a part of, but also which space arc you would actually be like assigned to, because there's so much care put into this this ascension process. Like, for instance, also, many people wake up for a nap, or maybe they're born with like a triangle symbol, and that's usually a telltale sign that a person is a part of the Galactic Federation. So they would have like an aspect of themselves, part of this like federation of planets, and kind of almost like a warrior. Like you have one, like a perfect like example on your right cheek right here, and that's usually like a telltale sign that that's one of the organizations that you're with and who checks on you. It's really fascinating. Even eye color and your blood type mean something. You know, I never knew this until I started learning this. It started coming through my sessions, my clients under hypnosis. And actually, these are clues. Like when we come into a life, we oftentimes choose certain clues or symbols for ourselves to help ourselves along our journey. And your eye color actually is one of these clues that you choose for yourself before you come in to your life. So you know, like color therapy is a thing. Your eyes are actually broadcasting information. So my eyes are broadcasting information to your soul, and you're reading mine. And your iris contains the blueprint of your soul. So all the rings and dots in your iris mean something. Like, who knew? And when you're projecting like blue eyes, in general, and of course this is super general, you're projecting information from like one of the water planets. So you might have dreams about like maybe being on one of the water planets, or maybe you can connect very well with like even aquatic beings here. People with blue eyes feel an affinity oftentimes to dolphins or whales. Green eyes are usually a projection from Lyra. And what's so fascinating is people with green eyes often have a hard time with electronics because they're broadcasting through themselves information that's of a much higher frequency than this realm. And so oftentimes it can be hard to be around, a person with green eyes, and your electronics. And then there's like different speckles that show up in the eyes when a person's really projecting information from Arcturus. And it's so interesting because like these are clues and they actually mean something. And they're here transmitting information to the next soul that you're talking to. Oh, and brown eyes seem to be transmitting information from the earth. So in general, people with brown eyes have reincarnated a lot of times and they broadcast ancient information, like earth-based information a lot of the times. You would call them like a very old soul. And then I can tell you about blood types if you want, but I just love all this stuff so much.
Yeah, well, that is fascinating. The blood types. I know people often ask, like, is Rh negative a sign that someone is an extraterrestrial star seed?
Yes. Rh negative signified that the hybridization program was working. So when you combine Rh negative blood with green eyes and astigmatism and red hair, that's considered the gift of the stars. A lot of the pharaohs or the really wise pharaohs had that combination. And astigmatism is not really what you think it is. It's actually an ancient ability to see into different dimensions. That's why the eye shape is different. But Rh negative blood is like a very interesting blood type because it often carries a personality type. Oftentimes, people with Rh negative blood type are more geared towards a leadership role. And there's many different extraterrestrial um, races that consider this a very special blood type. Then you get the O blood type, which is really fascinating because according to my clients, Jesus had the O blood type. So the O blood type in general usually carries a lot of information from Atlantis, Lemuria, and ancient Egypt. It's almost like symbolic in the O. And so people with the O blood type would, if they went to Egypt and they touched some of the megalithic structures, they'd actually activate things within their soul DNA. And people with like the B blood type in general carry a lot of information from Lemuria or the South Pacific, and they could definitely try to revisit their ancient wisdom and try to regain some of that wisdom when it comes to plants and crystals. And the A blood type can oftentimes tap in or remember information from the Norse mythology. If you have A blood type and you have anemia, that's usually a telltale sign that you are a reincarnated druid, or you have lived as a fairy because that fey realm could not handle iron. And so it's sort of like a clue for you. But if you go to Glastonbury and you drink out of the chalice well, there's a special mineral that will activate your soul DNA in the chalice well that they haven't really studied yet. And if you have AB blood type, it's usually just showing that you're a very balanced individual, bringing a couple blood types together. But I mean, I never knew that these were like things or clues, but really they are.
When it comes to the second timeline that you see happening at some point, of those three, the second, I think, is probably the one that we need to look closely at. That you said that there were greys involved in that, and that we need to avoid making the mistake that the greys did of choosing technology over spirituality or emotional development. So, does this mean that people that have been exposed to abductions are somehow being manipulated by greys to achieve their agenda?
Oh, no, I mean, the agenda is to stop the organic growth of a human. So basically this experiment is to not implant things in your DNA. I mean, try your best not to become AI, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The organic human is what has all the potential, not the AI human. So um, there's always advice from these higher beings, all different types of extraterrestrials, to stay as organic as possible. And actually, we're moving towards more of an organic lifestyle. But what happens is when you lose the organic human and you become AI and you go down the trajectory of the grays, you essentially have to repeat this whole cycle over again. So the experiment is to stay organic as possible and not be a robot.
Right, and I guess that's part of the reason you're doing these tours
Yeah.
and doing your work is to help people connect with these power centers. So, I mean, this Egypt tour, I know this is not your first one. I mean, do you plan to continue to do these? Do you plan to do these in other places?
I would like to do them in other places. I do have some workshops where I take people to Costa Rica, and I have different workshops, but they book up so quickly. I do 2 Egypt tours a year, and they usually book up within 2 hours.
Oh,
Um, but I have like 3 day workshops that I do that I absolutely love because I've learned what kind of things people need from the higher self. And they all say that people really need inner work. And so I just follow along what they tell me to do. And I try to do that with everyone to really help as best as I can because I just feel like we're all playing our role, we're all playing our part, and I really want people to know these things. I don't know how anyone would know, what I receive on a daily basis because I have access to this information. So I really feel passionate about sharing it.
well, I know this tour has been jam packed, and I've seen many interesting things and felt connections and reconnections, visiting all these temples and megalithic structures. And I think it's a great way to kind of reconnect with the ancient history. But I personally feel that that is actually very helpful for being ready for this future where the extraterrestrials are going to appear, and we need to work with them to create higher centers of learning and deal with planetary problems and not be in a place of fear, not be manipulated by the deep state or the dark side that wants to kind of poison that, as happened, in Atlantis. So I kind of feel that your tour really did a great job in reconnecting us to these different power spots.
Thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say. I feel really honored that you and your wife joined me on this tour, actually. You've shared with me and many of us so much amazing wisdom. So I really appreciate our friendship. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, I think there's many wonderful things that are coming, and I still, of those three timelines, I think that highest organic timeline is somehow going to happen. I don't know how. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
it's foretold about, and it's actually in our stars. So each person is tethered to a star system, and you can tell which one you're tethered to just by which one you feel drawn to. Stars are actually portal systems in which we originate from. So they are spots of light, they're portals. So we each are tethered and we come through a star system. Our star systems, there are 13 star systems according to the higher self. 13 is a special number. Um, our star systems move in a wave like pattern throughout our galactic sphere. So they will go up when we're having a golden age, they go down when we're having a negative age. Well, our stars are in alignment for this ascension process. Our stars are moving up to a golden age. So no matter what anyone does or tries to interfere with this ascension process, it's actually in alignment. It's happening. It's written in the stars. All our stars are moving up, and we are moving in that direction, regardless. And the middle timeline, everyone will be okay. I mean, you can't do this wrong. This is really an experiment, an experience. So people often worry if they're in the lowest timeline or if they're in the middle timeline. Um, there really isn't anything to worry about. If you want to know the one thing that the higher self says to do, if you really want to help humanity and yourself, is to become a master of yourself, to master yourself spiritually. When you become a spiritual master, this leaves an imprint in the whole consciousness that never fades or can be taken away. So if you master yourself and you really try to figure out who you really are and figure out everything you can about yourself, and you master yourself spiritually, then it's almost like what Jesus and Buddha did, and you will help so many people if you work on yourself.
That's wonderful advice. So, any kind of final words you want to share with people? Where do people go if they want to learn more about you, watch some of your interviews or any books and so forth?
You can go to my website, theholistichuhypnotist.com, and all my books are on Amazon and Audible. I write all the hypnotist journey books.
So, why don't you tell us about your new book that's coming out and what your latest book dealt?
So my latest book is called A Hypnotist Journey from the Trail to the Star People, and it was all about this. It was all about life. It was based on the lifetime of one Native American from the 1800s who came through one of my clients, Les, under hypnosis, who said that they wanted to share their story. That the evolution, or our consciousness had reached a point in its evolution where it was time to tell the story of what it was like to walk the trail of tears. But I felt like the most important aspect of that story for me was that it never really placed blame on anyone. It was just describing how we've all reincarnated as so many different players, so many different pieces of the puzzle. I mean, Anawaya was his name. He never said it was okay what happened, but he just said that in general, humans have been, taken over, many times in the past, and it's really time to move past all these stories that we've told ourselves and learned. And my newest book that's coming out soon, or in a couple months, is based on this mystical place called Avalon. And essentially, I was working with this woman under hypnosis who I found out was an actual real person from the Middle Ages. So I was able to learn a lot of these secret teachings and all these old mysteries about this sacred place, Avalon. And I can't wait for that book to come out.
Well, same here. I look forward to that coming out, and I'd love to have you back on the show to discuss that book.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for being on the show and telling us all about your wonderful work and your Egypt tour.
Thanks so much for having me.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.